The night was growing colder. On the decks of the Titanic, nobody was talking about dreams anymore. Nobody was talking about America. Everyone was thinking about survival. "Women and children only!" The officer's voice echoed across the crowded deck. Thomas's mother and little sister, Alice, moved toward a lifeboat. The moment they had feared had finally arrived. "Why can't Dad come with us?" Alice asked. Thomas's father forced a smile. "I'll be on another boat," he said. But deep inside, he knew that might never happen. At the last moment, Thomas was allowed to board the lifeboat as well. As the boat began descending, he turned back toward the deck. His father stood among hundreds of men who had not found a place. "Take care of your mother and sister," his father called. Thomas nodded. Those would be the last words. The lifeboat drifted farther from the Titanic. From a distance, the great ship looked completely different. Only hours earlier, it had seemed powerful and unsinkable. Now, it was slowly dying. Its bow sank deeper into the freezing Atlantic Ocean. Passengers watched in silence. Some prayed, some cried. Others simply stared in disbelief. Thomas's mother searched the decks again and again, hoping to see her husband one last time. But the darkness and the crowd made it impossible. Back on the ship, Thomas's father remained calm. Like many fathers that night, he chose the safety of his family over his own survival. He helped women and children reach the remaining lifeboats, knowing that his own chances were growing smaller with every... As time passed, the Titanic tilted further. Then, a terrible sound echoed across the ocean. The ship groaned under immense pressure. Steel bent. Metal screamed. And suddenly, the impossible happened. The Titanic began to break apart. Passengers in the lifeboats watched in horror as the giant ship split into two sections. The front half disappeared beneath the water. The stern rose high into the night sky. For a few moments, it stood almost vertically above the ocean. Then gravity took over. Slowly at first, then faster. The stern slipped beneath the surface. One by one, the lights went out. Darkness swallowed the ship. The Titanic was... For a few seconds, there was complete silence. Then came the screams. Hundreds of voices rose from the freezing water. Passengers who had entered the ocean cried out for help. The sound echoed across the Atlantic. Many people in the lifeboats broke down in tears. Some covered their ears. Others prayed. Thomas sat frozen. Somewhere in that darkness was his father. But he could do nothing. Minute by minute, the cries became weaker, fewer, quieter, until eventually they disappeared. A terrible silence settled over the ocean, and somehow that silence felt even worse. As the sun rose, crew members began pulling exhausted passengers aboard. Many survivors were too weak to stand. Some collapsed the moment they reached safety. Others hugged strangers and wept openly. Thomas helped his mother carry Alice onto the rescue ship. For the first time since the disaster began, they were safe. But there was one painful reality they could no longer ignore. His father was not there. Thomas searched every face, again and again, but he never found him. Like more than 1,500 others, his father had been lost that night. Days later, the Carpathia arrived in New York City. Thousands of people gathered at the docks. Some waited for loved ones. Others feared the worst. Across the world, newspapers carried the shocking news. The Titanic, once called unsinkable, had disappeared beneath the Atlantic Ocean. The disaster stunned humanity. Investigations followed. Mistakes were examined. Important changes were made to maritime safety laws. Ships would carry enough lifeboats for everyone. Ice patrols would monitor dangerous waters. Emergency communication systems would be improved. The lessons learned from the tragedy would help save countless lives in the future. For Thomas, however, the Titanic was never just a historical event. It was personal. Years passed. He grew older. He built a life in America, just as his father had dreamed. But he never forgot that cold April night. He never forgot the giant ship. He never forgot the families that were torn apart. And he never forgot the final wave from his father, standing on the deck of the Titanic. Whenever people asked about the disaster, Thomas would say, "The Titanic was never only about a ship sinking. It was about courage, sacrifice, and ordinary people who chose others before themselves." More than a century later, the Titanic is still remembered around the world. Not because of the ship alone, but because of the human stories behind it. Stories of hope, stories of loss, stories of love, and stories of extraordinary courage in the face of unimaginable tragedy. The Titanic disappeared beneath the Atlantic Ocean, but the courage and sacrifice of the people aboard continue to inspire the world to this day.
So keep watching. Everyone, stay with the channel. Thank you. Thank you.